Welcome to another Conveyancing Matters. Today's our news roundup for June and July 2022.
Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
Hello Stu, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Lorraine. How are you?
Fine, thank you. So, as you say, June and July 2022, conveyancing news. There's quite a potpourri of things that we think are worth chatting about.
Potpourri? What does that mean?
Potpourri. Loads of stuff.
Loads of stuff, right,
that smells
okay.
nice in
Too
a bowl.
complicated for me. Right, go on then.
Stuff that smells nice in a bowl, that'd be you and me, wouldn't it? The mortgage affordability test that we mentioned a few weeks ago, Stu, that's finally been scrapped.
No surprise there, was it?
Not really. So, frankly, lenders don't really have to have as many constraints when they're deciding whether somebody, can take out a mortgage or not, which I personally find a little surprising.
Yeah.
But there we go. I mean, what impact that's going to make on the conveyancing world is a bit harder to say. I think it will perhaps make it easier for some people to borrow money. But I do think the risk for conveyancers is perhaps people who are borrowing a higher percentage of...
it's something for me that, in the remit of what we do, it's something that I don't worry about.
Bless.
Let the clients worry about getting the mortgage, let us concentrate on the legal work.
Yeah, I think it's the advice thing that's the issue, isn't it? And it's really making sure that, your mortgage reports are really tight to your clients, that they understand the risks.
Of course.
So if you haven't refreshed your mortgage report for a few years, then frankly, I suggest you do. But anyway... and the first Help to Buy equity mortgage, Stu, that's rolled out. The first one of those has rolled off the blocks. I know that PCS and Mars, you've got a bit of a niche for the old Help to Buy.
Yeah, we've done loads of it over the years, and probably maybe almost in my conveyancing lifetime, it might well be one of the biggest kicks I think it's ever given the industry in terms of new work, certainly from the last recession anyway.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So I'm trying to think of anything else that's come along that's rivaled it.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, they're sort of going to grind to a halt. So the standard Help to Buy loans are grinding to a halt sort of at the end of this year, really, end of 2022. But what the government has introduced is a Help to Buy equity mortgage.
That's the one.
Which is a different product in that it's to help people buy or build a property. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah.
But what do you think is the real stinger with that one?
It used to be, didn't it? Help to Buy, when it first came in, it was new build. Everything was new build orientated. So it's only kind of morphing back to where it was before, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. Except this new product is for people to buy their own, to build their own properties, which of course by definition is going to be a much smaller market.
Of course.
But I think
much smaller pool.
I think the zinger for advisors is, this product clearly isn't going to be the volume of the sort of the standard Help to Buy stuff, so the self-build loans. But I think the real zinger that conveyancers need to pick up on is the fact that the repayment calculation, if and when these products are repaid, the value is going to be based on, or the redemption figure is going to be based on the value of the land.
Yeah, that's right.
As well as the loan. So if the value of the land has gone up, then the amount payable back to the government is also going to go up. And that's even if the borrower owned the land before.
That's right.
So I think that's a bit of a zinger, really. So anything else, Stu? What other things have caught your eye this month?
So we saw the spat regarding Silex. And you can tell us a bit more about that. It's not my regulation. So there's, was it the Silex, the regulation itself?
Yeah, Silex Regulation and Silex, the body that looks after the interests of legal execs. They've just had this really public spat, which I don't think is going away anytime soon. I mean, I must declare a bit of an interest because many years ago I was a director of one of the Ilex companies. But yeah, I just think it's a real shame because an enormous amount has been done over the last sort of 10, 20 years to promote the importance of the Silex qualification, actually. And what appears to be happening, according to reports in the Gazette, is that Silex, which was regulated by its own body, Silex Regulation, without Silex Regulation knowing, has actually approached the SRA and said, we'd like you to regulate us, or at least we'd like to talk about it. And Silex Regulation is sort of taking its teddies home because they weren't consulted, they know nothing about it, and they don't think that that's something that's within Silex's remit anyway. And I just actually feel terribly for legal execs, really, because I just think this very public spat between these two
can't be good, can it?
No, I think so.
No.
So I think if you're a Silex qualified, I think you ought to be looking carefully at what your regulator and your representative body are up to, because I just think it's a damn shame, really. And what about these old cyber ransoms, Stu? I mean, they're quite a big deal.
It's a difficult one, this, isn't it? Because cybercrime is something now that, heavily affects us, and we all know what happened. Was it last year, or was it the start of this year?
Tail end of last year, wasn't it?
Tail end of last year, was it with Simplify? So, it's massively at the forefront of all, firms, and of course, our insurance. We've now got to be really careful what we do, what we don't do. But it's interesting, isn't it? We're now not allowed to pay cyber ransoms. But again, it's one for me, you go straight to your insurers anyway, wouldn't you? And you do exactly what they tell you to do, as would be the terms of the insurance.
Yeah, I think this is the interesting one, because the National Cyber Security Centre and the Information Commissioner's Office have written to the Law Society to say, would you please remind solicitors that they, shouldn't be paying cyber ransoms, not either on their own behalf or indeed advising clients to.
Yeah.
And as you say, I wonder. And my question was, and I really wondered, what impression the insurers had of this and what view the insurers took, really, because I think they're in the driving seat.
Well, I was absolutely gobsmacked that actually it does happen and people pay these. I could not believe it. I thought it was something that you hear about, and obviously, if you were being blackmailed into paying a sum of money, you wouldn't do it.
Well, or you're not going to tell anybody if you do.
No, true. But I was absolutely amazed that actually it happens quite regularly.
Yeah.
And I suppose the cost implication of paying a ransom amount as opposed to the time and the effort it would take to reconstitute all your IT networks, I suppose it's cheaper.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised that people would do it, and for me, if you pay it once, why wouldn't it happen again? But I think know.
Well, that's certainly the view that the National Cyber Security Centre takes.
Yeah, amazing.
So not perhaps one for coal-face conveyancers, but I think it's really important for people within the industry to know what's happening, and also I think what's really important for anybody working in the conveyancing department is to just understand the absolutely fundamental importance of cyber risk, and that one email coming in and that one click on that one dodgy link, and then might have ruined it for you.
Well, it's always looking at where the emails come from, isn't it? Not just the name, the actual detail on the email addresses. There's so many now that are impersonated. It's like a daily occurrence, isn't it?
Yeah. So moving on then, Stu, this one will probably stick in your craw a bit. So it was reported quite recently that the Legal Ombudsman has said of itself, we're going to make big improvements in the way it handles complaints and the volume of complaints it handles. They're going to make big improvements in the next 18 months, Stu. So does that warm your cockles?
Not really. No, 18 months. You'd have thought it'd be a lot sooner than that, wouldn't you? I know it's a difficult one, this, isn't it? Because we speak too out of turn.
Oh, no, go on.
But there is what's the right word to use here? A bit of a hypocritical, it smacks you in the face that you are, writing to somebody because you've been accused of taking too long maybe to do something, to which you then don't receive a reply for 6 months.
Yeah. Leo reported,
where do you go with that?
Well, Leo reported apparently that its unopened cases this year were 5,862. And they've actually, I've sort of chatted about this elsewhere, but they've essentially changed their own terms of reference so they can sort of deal with a lot more. And that's, It's
a difficult one, isn't it? Because conveyancing practices have had to go through such an element of change over the last 2 years to cope with the demand of additional work. And of course, now the Legal Ombudsman is having to do exactly the same, but of course they have the fallback that they can afford to, take longer to deal with things or whatever may be the case. Whereas, of course, we don't have that luxury, and we've been criticised by them as a result of it. So it just doesn't seem the right kind of balance there, does it?
Not really. I think one of the things when you're as old as me, Stu, you do realise that, the organisations which have dealt with legal complaints have gone through various sort of, iterations over the last 20 years. But one of the massive problems with all of them has always been their own ability to deal with the complaints that get past them. So, good on Leo for trying to do something about it, but
they need to. But for me, it's difficult as well when we deal with them. You can get a complete difference of opinion, depending on the case handler you get, and it's the lack of consistency that comes from Leo that is the main concern to me. At least if they had a prescribed time frame, as we have to have, or at least if they had rulings that were consistent, I wouldn't have so much beef. But when you don't know what you're going to get from one day to the next, it's really difficult to deal with.
Well, it actually makes it really difficult to put procedures in place yourself to help you deal appropriately with complaints that you get.
No,
I
definitely.
think actually I'm right in saying, so, you know, your viewers could be wrong here, but I think that Leo is putting on some webinars in September
Yep.
about dealing with
Yeah.
complaints, so you might want to watch them. We'll watch them and comment on them for you. How's that? So Stu, you're a regulator, because I think
Yep.
we can do the gamut of regulators this month. So the CLC Risk
Yep.
Agenda, anything leap out of that for you? Your CLC regulator?
Yeah, so again, it's, they've spoken about crypto, cyber again, and they have a whole risk agenda that they've come out with and commented on. But, it's stuff we've spoken about before, haven't we? And, you feel like it's the same old stuff again that we're talking about here. If we haven't got our sort of act together regarding cybercrime, crypto, what we need to find out about, what our firm's policy is going to be in terms of what we accept, what we don't accept, what's regulated, what's not. It's a bit late by now, isn't it?
Well, arguably, I think what's interesting is the CLC's position, for example, on crypto assets, because some firms have said, yeah, we're going to dip our toe in that pool and we'll act for clients that want to use crypto to pay for assets. But the CLC have said they're expecting the same source of funds and source of wealth investigations as you do on cash. And I don't know enough about it. I profess to have no input.
But you can't, can you?
I doubt it.
It's impossible. So on one hand, you've got to do this, but physically you can't. It's a strange one, isn't it? I mean, at the moment, our policy is not to accept it. But I suspect that as the months, probably years roll on, it's going to be something that's going to creep in. And I'm sure there's going to be a massive change on the regulation behind it and the way we deal with it.
We'll be told
We're going to be told to, yeah. It's the future.
And of course the future, many would say, is digital ID checks. But interestingly, that's also on the CLC's risk agenda. As indeed, slightly bizarrely, apart from PII changes and complaints, they've also got, and I think you said they keep on their aged balances.
Yeah, I think aged balances has always been on the CLC's agenda. Whether it quantifies risk, I'm not sure.
Aged balances is quite in the same category as cybercrime in terms of risk to conveyancing firms. But
I think it's that theory, isn't it, that if you've got all these aged balances, you're not on top of things, and the client's it's volume, it's the client's money potentially that's sitting there that they're due. Yeah,
they tweaked around with their accounts rules actually fairly recently, if anybody's interested. What I also think is quite interesting about this, I always think that SRA regulated firms should look at what the CLC is talking about, and conversely, I think the CLC regulated firms should keep an eye on what the SRA is talking about, because the SRA has also introduced its risk review. I suspect the themes are very similar for both, but I do think that both sets of regulated organisations could learn, could keep up to date, really. So we all kind of have our hearts have dropped, Stu, over the last year or two whenever we've heard the word cladding. I think we all have a bit of a reaction to the word cladding now. And of course, one of the problems with producing the EWS1 certificates was A, there weren't enough specialists to do it, but B, there wasn't, the surveyors' indemnity insurers said, well, if you're a surveyor and you're going to do an EWS1 certificate, we're not going to insure you. Yeah. So the government's done something about that, theoretically, recently.
Yeah, so they've now got their own backed scheme. Hopefully they're going to alleviate that problem. But so go on.
Well, I was just going to say, hopefully it'll be self-funding. That's the idea. The government has said it will be self-funding, so theoretically the taxpayers aren't going to be paying for it. So maybe in future years that the government has also said it's hopefully going to be training up more people to produce the certificates. It'll be interesting what the surveyors have to say about it. It's
how this is going to follow through to the conveyancing process, isn't it? It's a subject that's not going to go away anytime soon. No. Although these measures you perceive as positive, they're not anything that's, in the short term anyway, certainly going to affect us, is it?
No.
We've still got to put up with it. Yeah.
I actually had a note from a colleague only in the last week or so that said, my neighbour's son has had, a transaction fall apart because the lender said, dodgy EWS1, is there any way around this? And I just replied to it and said, no, if the lender isn't going to play,
that's
the
it.
lender's not going to play.
Yeah.
Really. But, a couple of the sort of nerdy things that I'm always sort of interested in, really, Stu, that probably nobody else is, but in case anyone's interested, the Land Reg has updated Practice Guide 27 on the leasehold reform legislation, so I think anybody should probably be having a look at that to look at the Land Reg's view there. And also for anybody interested, and that will be lots of people interested in doing deeds of variation, of which there are now far more swilling around than there ever were. Practice Guide 68, you could also have a look at that, because the Land Registry amended section 4.5, in case you're interested, again to talk about the new Ground Rent Act. So there's a couple of sort of, I think, particularly relevant sort of Land Registry Practice Guide updates there, which you might be interested in. And the Legal Services Consumer Panel, our clients love us. So despite what you and your colleagues see every day, Stu, we're loved.
Do you think?
Yeah.
By whom? The clients?
Legal Services Consumer Panel has surveyed 3,500 people, and apparently 85% of them are satisfied with their legal services.
Well,
now,
again,
I think that's all legal services, but
yeah, I think it's the same. I think is it. We always focus on the negative, don't we? We always focus on the people that don't like us or the complaints that we get, not understanding that, you know, on a daily basis we help tens of thousands of people that are moving house all the time, house of their dreams, blah blah blah. But of course, it's difficult not to focus on the ones that aren't happy.
Yeah.
And also, from a conveyancing point of view, you know, we're continually the subject of criticism within the press, aren't we? And it's that part of it that I think's the bugbear for people that are, you know, working day to day.
It does. It wears you down a bit,
Yeah.
really. I mean, what slightly worries me is that the SRA have already sort of jumped on this bit of research and sort of are using it as a means to promote their idea that customers, because they're not clients anymore, Stu, that customers should be shopping
They're always
around.
clients.
Always clients. Well, they are to me, but it's perhaps because I'm old. But customers should be shopping around for legal services, and I just think, oh, you know, it's not, you know, it's not boxes of washing powder that we're talking about here.
I just feel that we're so archaic in some of these things, aren't we? People already shop around. And, you know, we don't need any more encouragement. You know, with the internet and everything else, people shop around all the time now, don't they?
Yeah, I still think a large number of people actually still choose that conveyancer on the basis of recommendation.
Yeah, some do. Some will go on locality, but a large percentage will still shop around, won't they?
So you're top of a firm, Stu. You're a big important boy. You're a big
Sure
important
about
boy. Legal Sector Affinity Group, anti-money laundering guidance. Were you excited that the Treasury accepted the guidance this week?
Ecstatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, ecstatic. Made my week, that did.
Yeah, it did.
What can you say about it? We haven't already said it's, you know, yeah.
Yeah, well, for firms that haven't yet looked at their PCPs, their policies, controls and procedures, so the LSAG guidance that came out now in January 2021, talking about and giving us 200 pages of guidance on the AML regs that came in January 2020. That's finally now, that guidance is finally have been approved by the Treasury. So if anybody hasn't looked at the changes and reviewed their PCPs, there's only tweaks. There aren't any really major changes, but anybody that's that position in a firm, you ought to be looking at it. And actually the SRA and the Law Society have both produced a little sort of summary of the changes. Probably the biggest change, there's been some updates in relation to verification of ID on beneficial owners. So if anybody's interested, that's the bit they need to be looking at, really. So another matter, we're close to your heart. We're covering the full gamut of regulators, as we've said. So CLC, little tiny
indemnity insurance. Yeah, I mean, supposedly we've had our kind of renewal now. So the next time we're talking about indemnity insurance in relation to the CLC, it should be a seamless process, shouldn't it?
Seamless and professional, like you
may. Apparently, we will have to submit our application by a certain time, which incidentally we've always done over all the years, full stop. And apparently, the insurers are going to have to reply with a quote by a certain time, supposedly a month before.
They're going to do
that? No, this year I think there were 3 interested insurers. So unfortunately, in terms of bargaining position, we have none. And the insurers hold all the cards, don't they? So I suppose watch this, next June or next May when we have to do our submissions. We'll see what happens, won't we? But I would be surprised if it's particularly different than this year round.
I think you're probably right, really. And something sort of, this is a bit of a knock down the road one, but I did notice, and anybody who's still in the conveyancing, profession in the next sort of 4 or 5 years, the government has just announced a big fund for councils to build something like 17,600 homes on brownfield sites, which is always, trumpeted as being something quite exciting. But of course, brownfield sites do mean, there's been other things on the land. And my concern for conveyancers, certainly not tomorrow, but if you are dealing with new sort of biggish new developments that maybe councils have been involved with, look out, because clearly the environmental issues I think are going to be the absolutely massive thing that we need to keep a close eye on. So that's certainly not something for tomorrow, but if there's more building on brownfield sites, I think that's just potentially shifting the liability to the conveyancers.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And I've noticed already there are more and more failed environmental searches by the day now, I would say.
Yeah.
I think where the collation of information is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it's going to be something that's going to carry on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and this only sort of shows that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not going to go away,
No,
is it?
definitely not.
The SRA, little tidbit, has been allowed to introduce its fining powers from £2,000 to £25,000. So firms can now be clobbered by the SRA to the tune of 25k. Not much more to say about that, but obviously if you are SRA regulated, watch out, kids, take care, take care. And the running saw that is the SIF runoff cover. So again, if you're 22 and you've just started in conveyancing, this isn't going to worry you. If you're at the other end of the age spectrum and you want to stop conveyancing, it might, because essentially a fund that had been maintained by the SRA and formerly the Law Society to assist firms when they were sort of closing, essentially, and to protect the public. Well, the SRA wants to close it, and they keep kicking the can down the road, so they're keeping it open until September 2023, because there was this idea that there would be an alternative in the market that the insurers would be happy to, step in and provide, and of course they don't. They're not interested.
No, I'm not sure all the appetite's there for the insurers, is there? So.
Quite frankly, why would you be wanting to pick up
Exactly.
liability of a closed
certainly not.
firm
Exactly.
or retired senior
Lose,
partner?
lose, isn't it? Yeah.
And a sort of tiny point, but I think a bigger point. The Land Registry has mentioned, and I've noticed it a bit recently, Stu. They've amended quite a few forms. Two of the most recent being the Home Rights 1 and 2 actually, and the form SEV. But what they're doing, Stu, I've noticed, is they are putting more notes on forms to remind applicants that applications to register notices and restrictions shouldn't be made without reasonable cause.
Yeah.
And I think
Only
that's
a good thing, isn't it? That? Yeah.
It's a big deal, really.
Yeah.
It's Section 77 of the Land Registration Act, in case anyone's interested. But basically, if you're thinking, I'm just gonna bang this notice on this register, not entirely sure whether I should put it on, or I'll just have a go with this restriction, don't be gung-ho about it because of Section 77. If something ends up on a register that causes somebody loss and it's been put on there without reasonable cause, you weren't really sure of your ground, then actually the Land Registry aren't going to indemnify anybody. They're going to expect the applicant to.
Yeah.
So it's always been there, but I think it's just interesting the Land Registry
made
putting
the
that
notes.
note on more forms.
Yeah, definitely.
So they're kind of reminding people. So I wonder whether what's going on in the background is that more...
people have been doing it, obviously. Simple as that, isn't it?
I think so. And... well, something that we mentioned, Stu, on our last Conveyancing Matters Live, when we talked about new builds, we talked about index map searches not just being for unregistered land.
No, for more pending applications, looking at that from that sort of stance. Definitely.
Yeah, so the Land Reg has just done a little reminder on its SIM form to say, essentially that, if you've got registered land, you should still be thinking about doing SIM because it could reveal other registrations like a mines and mineral registration. So we have this kind of very blinkered view that we don't need to do an index map search because the title is registered. But actually there are
especially on developments and quirky places, definitely.
It's absolutely essential, I think, to do it on new build, I have to say.
Yeah.
And how, probably last thing to talk about for this month, Stu, because that's been a fair old bit that we've covered, I think, for the benefit of our lovely viewers. Is the view applications change going to make any difference in PCS, just in terms of tracking, how people's registrations are progressing?
Minimal. We always welcome any change, don't we? And the Land Registry are trying to make an effort. But for us, the sheer backlog that they have is the vein of our lives.
Yeah.
And until that backlog is cleared, we're going to continually get clients moaning. We're going to continually have to expedite, applications that we've made.
Yeah.
So until that comes, the other little, improvements they make are great, but that's the big thing they need to tackle.
Yeah, on that one, I simply don't understand, and I'm sure I'll be shot down by somebody for this, why Land Reg Resources, for example, is going into the migration of the local land charges data. And I can understand the reason why that might be a good idea.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why the resource is going into that now.
It's the timing.
Yeah.
It's the timing, isn't it? It's not a bad idea, but again, certain other things are kicked down the road.
Yeah.
That's what they need to do with this until such time as things are more up to date.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Stu, I think that was a fair old bit for people to think about. So thanks very much for watching and for joining us. We won't be doing a news update in August, because Stu and I will just be incredibly busy doing busy things. So we hope that that's been helpful and useful, and we will see you again soon.
Take care.
Bye.